This is a 3D printed Lamborghini Aventador. No, that is not a misspeak. This is a 3D printed Lamborghini Aventador. You're not going to believe how affordable this was done, and we're going to talk to the mastermind behind the story. So guys, I'm here with Sterling, who is the mastermind behind this 3D printed Lamborghini Aventador. I can't believe I'm still saying that. And Sterling, where did you get such a wild idea?
Well, it all started with my son and I playing Forza Horizon. It's a video game that we enjoyed playing, and we were doing it one December. And we always got in the Lamborghini Aventador. It's been my favorite car. I had a Lamborghini Countach on my wall when I was a kid, and it's one of his favorite cars as well. And so we were just finishing up a '69 Mustang project, and he kind of quipped to me, you know, could we build one of these?
So if I were to get that question, I mean, first obvious answer would be no, because I have no idea where to start. But I think the second obvious answer would be maybe like, well, if you couldn't afford a new one, start with the crashed one. So did you look at that route, like maybe rebuilding one?
That one was not, that didn't come up.
Okay.
Because I knew what crashed ones went for.
Right.
You know, and they were so much out of my price range, it wasn't even part of the plan.
Interesting.
So we knew that, and we knew we wanted to do a frame-up build. We knew we wanted to do our own frame. We knew that we wanted the car to be as close to legitimate as possible.
So why is that, right? Because most folks in your position would go out and buy an MR2 or a Fiero and go from there. Why did you want to do everything from the frame up?
So that's a viable option, right? You know, is to start with another chassis from another car. Mid-engines are always popular, like the Fiero, MR2, things of that nature, and then they just stretch the chassis. I didn't want to build off of, you know, pressed metal and stuff like that and weld it all together, because in my view, that seems like a safety concern, and the reason that cars come that way is expense to manufacture, right? Obviously, there's some safety concerns, but they get away with the minimum that they can get away with because it's a cost issue. And I wanted something that was really sturdy. I wanted something that could handle power, and I wanted something that I wasn't going to die in.
Okay.
And being a physicist, I know how to do the calculations to build a frame like that to handle those kinds of forces.
So you have a lot of college to back up the
Yes,
calculations behind it.
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess let's start with the beginning, because I mean, where do you begin with a vehicle like this?
Well, so you begin by planning on, we knew it was going to be a mid-engine.
Okay.
Had to be a mid-engine. And so that basically gives you a starting point where, okay, what mid-engine do we do? Do we do like a Audi R8? Do we do, you know, BMW V12? What do we, you know, well, I'm cheap. So what I did was I decided an LS1 was the best platform.
Great option.
I mean, I'm kind of a Ford guy, you know, at heart, but the LS1 just has such a great aftermarket. It has, you know, a great history of reliability. And it actually turns out that it is a great platform because of the LS swap that people do in their 911s, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that means that there's a company who actually has an interface kit. It's called Kennedy Engineering out of California. They have an interface kit that mates up a 911 transaxle with an LS1. Now, this has a little twist, because since the 911 is a rear engine and this is a mid-engine, you can obviously see the issue with where the transaxle sits. So the transaxle has to be inverted.
Oh.
So they got enough requests that they did an inverted transaxle kit for this.
So can we open up the hood? Do you mind? Let's take a look. So when you started this project, so you determined you wanted an LS1 based powertrain. Did you find like a crashed C5 Corvette? How did you find the engine?
I found a crashed C5 Corvette. The engine was still in it.
Okay.
And it was a place in, it was a junkyard in Iowa.
Wow.
And they showed me the engine running before they pulled it.
Okay.
And then I bought it for $1,000, shipping and everything.
Unreal.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you started essentially with what you wanted the powertrain to be. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And then where do you go from there?
Then you have to build the frame around it. So where are the wheels going to go? Where are the axles going to? What axles are you going to use? So I wanted the engine centered. So in the real Lamborghini, it's actually slightly offset, which looks a little weird.
Right.
But I wanted mine centered. And so that means I had to find the right half axles for the transmission. And so I mated some Ford Thunderbird half axles for the drivetrain.
So where are you finding the knowledge that, like, oh, if I use a Thunderbird axle with the Porsche transaxle, I mean, it'll all work together? Are you just figuring it out as you go?
No, there's two major places. The first one is YouTube University.
Okay.
All right. So, there's so many YouTubers out there now who are doing really great work, and they like to put their content out there, and it's fantastic because you learn a lot of things. The half axles were a great example. The other one is the two radiators that are in back. They're from a Honda Civic.
Okay.
But and then you go, well, how do I do the fans? Well, they're actually 911 fans, and they fit perfectly on the Honda Civic radiator.
Wow.
Because somebody went through the process of doing that and then put it on YouTube.
So you had the basic concept of what you wanted, and then you started engineering the frame. Did you use CAD?
Yeah.
I mean, oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, I use a program called SolidWorks.
Okay, so this is not some back. This
No,
is not
no.
just a backyard. Let's
No.
start gluing.
Now you
pipes
can use
together.
things like Fusion 360 and some other programs that are a little less expensive. But at my job, I have access to SolidWorks, so
Now,
that's what I use.
What I'm noticing too, right off the bat, is when I first heard about this project, I thought, well, he's going to throw some solid axle in the back, like some Ford rear axle, call it a day. But I'm looking at your suspension. I mean, that is some, excuse my language, pretty advanced shit right there. So how did you work out the suspension geometry, and how did you make those decisions?
It's not rocket science. If you have a tape measure and you know how to use it, these types of things are pretty easy to put together. It's effectively, you're just taking the coilovers and putting them horizontally instead of vertically. And when you do that, you just have to have a fulcrum and a push rod.
Okay.
And so that's all we did. So is it tested at greater than 40 miles an hour? No. And I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups along the way. But so far, it doesn't shake apart, and it seems to work just fine.
Right.
But as we start pushing it going faster and faster, we're going to take it easy because, it's got a Mustang 2 suspension up front, so that's not, but it does still have the push rod, horizontal coilovers up front. And this was just to mimic what the Aventador does, because I kind of like that look, right?
Very similar, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back up to the front here, Cole. Now, one thing which I think is really unique about your build here is proportionally, it's very close to an Aventador. And like we were talking earlier, you see like the Fieros and some of the kit cars, and they're like clearly the wheelbase is wrong. So talk to me dimensionally, how similar is this to the actual car?
So the wheelbase is 2,700 millimeters or 2.7 meters long, which is exactly what an Aventador is.
Okay.
So that was important to me. However, I really like the wide body look. And so what I did was I made the front end 4 inches wider and then the rear is 8 inches wider.
Wow.
And we'll get to where the body panels come from, but I had the ability to change those so that I didn't have to tack on fender flares.
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing that, how cohesive it looks, and that there's no rivets or kind of sketchy bonding materials. And I think that brings us to
I hid those behind everything.
And that brings us to the most, in my opinion, the headline of the story, the 3D printing. So in the past, if people are building cars, a lot of fiberglass work, right? A lot of maybe potentially composites, but like, why 3D printing? Why'd you go this route?
I went this route because we had a few choices, and these were, I was like thinking about, doing it in steel panels.
Okay.
And, either doing section welding where you cut little sections out and curve them and weld them all together and then smooth them out. Or you make a buck out of plywood and you beat the panels around that. So that's other. But I was like, you know what? I'm a scientist. I want to do stuff that's cool and innovative and new technology. And 3D printing had come a long way. And so I was like, why don't we just give that a try? Let's see what happens. So the first thing we did was we printed a rear bumper.
Okay.
And then we glued it all together. We printed it in little pieces. We got a printer from Amazon, a little cheap printer from Amazon. It only has about a 1 foot cube volume.
Okay.
So you print little teeny panels, and you glue them all together, and then you have a rear bumper.
Now let's start with that rear bumper. So when you were designing this, I mean, was this all designed by you and by hand? Did you have any blueprints to work off of?
So again, going back to the internet, there's a website called GrabCAD where people do some design work and of these cars. And some of them are good, some of them are horrible. So, you know, kind of trying to, you know, marry the two.
Okay.
Right? What did I think was good? What did I think looked a little sketchy or stuff like that? And then I would go through and kind of make my adjustments.
Wow.
Yeah. The other thing I did, though, was I had a scale model. I had a 10th scale, a nice 10th scale model. And so I took out some calipers and did some measuring there. And that's kind of what set some of the dimensions.
Now, so you printed this rear bumper in like a one little cube foot intervals at a time. I mean, you can't see the joins. How did you get it all joined together?
So it's a 3D print, which means it's printed out of thermoplastic. Thermoplastic in the environment is not the best thing in the world, especially the polylactic acid that I was printing with. So we needed to do something about that. And so back to technology, we basically encapsulated all the 3D prints in carbon fiber.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's because the aerospace industry has made the fabric so inexpensive and the epoxy so inexpensive, we basically took every component and we vacuum bagged every component and basically just sandwiched the carbon fiber against the 3D print, and that gives it its strength.
So you started with the rear bumper. What was next? What was the next component that you worked on?
The next component was we just started moving forward.
Okay.
So the next one was this rear deck, and then we went on to the quarter panels, the doors, and then the fender, and finally the front end.
Now, when I look at, like, let's take this quarter panel, for example. I mean, in the Lamborghini factory, that's a huge molding, huge stamping. I mean, was this also in little 1 foot chunks, or was
That's right. Yeah, everything you see here was done in that way.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Unreal. Now, what I think is so fascinating about this is, like, as you mentioned with the carbon process, is you don't see any of the seams, right? Now, if you were to do it again, now that you've done all this work, would you still have used that method, or would you have used a different method?
I would have used the same method.
Okay.
I would have made some tweaks to it, obviously, and I've been doing that as I move forward. So some of the 3D prints, like you see all the trim pieces here that are in carbon fiber,
Yeah.
those are just skinned.
Okay.
So they just have a carbon fiber layer over the top. And it's because they're not really structural, they don't have to carry a lot of weight, and they're made out of a thermoplastic that can handle up to 105 centigrade, so they're not going to warp or melt or do anything weird in the sunlight. So, and I did some testing.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. So one question I have for you is, obviously the real Aventador, you know, like the sills are very structural.
Yeah.
Do these components, or are they holding any of the structure together in the car? Or
No.
is it mostly the frame?
It's all,
underneath?
yeah, the frame is all tubular steel, so the main monocoque area is actually made out of 2x4, 120 wall steel.
Okay.
So it's very sturdy. A lot of people will do, like, you know, the 1-inch tubular chrome moly frames and, you know, basically go to town welding, you know, this kind of web work of frame. But I decided not to do that. I just wanted something with good dimensional stability.
Nice.
And then the front and rear subframe are 2x3 steel, and everything is all welded together. So the chassis are not bolted. You know, the front and the rear subframe are not bolted, they're welded.
So what's been the hardest exterior panel to get right?
That would be the door.
Okay, the door. And why was the door so challenging?
The door is so challenging because it's a scissor door.
Okay.
And most people understand that a scissor door comes up.
Yep.
Well, on the Aventador, they come up and out.
Okay.
So they're a little more complicated.
Now, does it work?
Yeah.
Can we see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see how that works. Oh, wow, look at that. So what challenges did that scissor door present? Why was that so difficult?
The hinge is the biggest problem because a regular hinge for these cars is $1,000 on eBay.
Oh.
I'm not paying $1,000 for a piece of metal.
It's the cost of your engine.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I got to get 2 of them. So that was the second point that we were going to talk about, which is the community. The replica builder community has been a huge factor in this. And I have a friend who's building one of these down in Texas, and he's an older gentleman, you know, retired and so on and so forth, but he has enormous amounts of experience. He used to, you know, he spent his entire career as a race car builder.
Wow.
And I saw the way he was doing his hinges, and I, you know, immediately phoned him up and I said, oh man, I got to get the plans for that. And he says, nah, I'll just send you a pair. So I was like, well, I have an extra dash hood for my Aventador, so I'm going to send him the dash hood in thanks for the...
Nice.
So just kind of exchanging parts.
Yeah, right.
You know, and ideas. And it's a great community.
Now, let's talk about the front of the car, because there's a lot of really interesting things in the front. So, obviously there's components you can't 3D print, like the headlights.
Right.
So are these Lamborghini headlights?
You say can't print 3D headlights, but
Am I wrong?
I actually
Yeah.
did print a set.
No way.
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But these ones are real.
So why did you end up going real instead of your 3D printed ones?
That was a gift.
It was a gift. Okay.
Yes. So that was a gift from Lamborghini.
Very cool. So that was going to be another thing I wanted to talk about is how has the response from the company that builds the actual car been? Because I would think that they'd be super against it, right? You know, copyright questions come into play. What have they been like to work with?
So you can compare and contrast them to Ferrari.
Yeah, right.
Ferrari sends cease and desist letters to people who wrap their cars, right? Okay, or paint them in a way that they don't like, or add or subtract on their vehicles. And it's this I think, overreaction to a brand. Lamborghini is more like, you know, we don't want, you know, a bunch of people in, you know, some other country who are building fake Lamborghinis and selling them on the black market. That they don't want that at all. But the guy in his garage building a replica, they could care less.
Wow.
Right? It's just the sincere form of flattery to them, right? And so, you know, they'd like to protect their brand, but they're not going to go after, you know, Joe Blow in his garage. Wow. So, and they take more of a, you know, kind of, if you're with Lamborghini, your family, right? Rather than, you know, oh, we're so exclusive, you
That's
know,
cool to hear.
We'll tell you when you can have one of our cars.
Yeah, really, really cool.
Now, they do a little bit of that with their higher end, you know, low production ones, but for the most part, they're very great. They're a fantastic company.
Now, when you got these headlights in, right, was the front end done? Did you have like the bumper done?
I did.
So was that a nerve-wracking thing? Like, is the actual part?
It.
Oh, you had to redo it. Interesting.
I did.
Yeah.
And not only that, they donated the dash and the steering wheel.
Oh, no way.
And I had already designed a dash.
Okay.
So I had to actually cut the entire front of the car apart.
Wow.
And redo it so that I could fit that original dash in there. Because that dash, when you sit in the car, you feel like you're in an Aventador.
Well, and that is, I mean, it's amazing that you were able to get it so correct, where you got the width of the dashboard, right?
Yeah.
And the way it mates up with the door panels.
Yeah.
Are the door panels Lamborghini as well?
Yeah, they are. They're something I sourced that off of eBay.
Yeah.
The center console I got off of eBay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unreal.
So there's a large market of, you know, crashed exotics. So you can source these off of eBay. They're not cheap in some senses. So you kind of have to be diligent and watch for those bargains as they come up.
Now, I imagine that's a component, right? Like if you had started with the Fiero and then you had gotten this Lamborghini Dash, no way that would have fit, right? Because of the dimensions of an 80s GM car.
Yeah.
So that must have been pretty satisfying knowing like, well, I'd started with
I got close.
You got close.
Yeah.
You got close, which is really, really cool. So talk to me through the electrical architecture. What are you running and how are you making things work?
Sure. So the engine management system is a Holley Dominator. Absolutely love the Holley ECUs. They're fantastic. I used it in my Mustang. They're so easy to work with. And basically they're just turnkey and I can forget about it. The other thing is that I did put a power distribution module in there instead of a standard fuse block.
Okay.
So those are completely computer-controlled power distribution modules that allow me to do, you know, the dimming lights when you close the door.
That's cool.
And all of the things that you want to link in a modern supercar.
Right. Where are the seats out of?
The seats I got from a company called Brom.
They look great.
Yeah,
They look really, really
yeah,
good.
they're fake leather, but they should last for a while.
I mean, I'm just thinking of, you know, the hundreds of millions that the Volkswagen Group put into the electrical architecture in the Lamborghini and getting it all to work. Like, when you're done with this, are you going to try to make every switch in the center console work? Or are you
Already does.
It already does?
Yeah, I
No
already
way.
hijacked all the switches.
Come on. No
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Wow. What about the infotainment screen? What is that? Is that...
Yeah, that's all hijacked. Everything works.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's wild. So what do you, I mean...
You can see that the AC system is different.
Right.
So that one would have been much harder to hijack. So I just have a standard retrofittable AC system for it.
Do you get the parking brake to work too? The electronic
Yeah,
parking brake?
parking brake works.
Wow. What about the windows, like the glass in a car like this? How do you go about finding that?
Yeah, now you hit on a real pain point. So you're gonna love the windshield. The windshield is from a Pacifica minivan.
Okay.
And I had some friends of mine at a company called Chip Pros. They actually cut down that windshield and then installed it for me.
Okay, gotcha.
So it doesn't have quite enough length. You can see it's a couple inches too short, but at least it's very close.
Yeah, right.
The other windshields on the kit cars are, you know, they're maybe like this. I mean, they're almost a foot too short.
Right, and it looks obvious
And
that
it's obvious. It just doesn't look right.
Right.
I didn't want to go that way. The quarter windows here, those go for like $800, $900 from Lambo. So those are Lexan.
Okay, gotcha.
They will eventually be glass, and they will be cut from a piece of safety glass.
Okay, so you're going to get them all custom.
Yeah, so I'm going to get them all custom. You can see here we have a curve, but these are flat.
And what about the side windows? What are you going to do for side windows?
So I actually have real Lamborghini door windows.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, they're not in here right now, but they're hiding out in my basement in a very safe, secure location.
And
those are $1,500 a piece.
Come on.
Yeah.
Wow. And then windshield wipers?
Those are original.
Those are
Got them off of
Lamborghini.
eBay.
What about like the cowl piece here? Is that
eBay.
eBay? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. So it's amazing. I mean, that's incredible to me that you got the proportions so close.
Thank you.
That stuff like Lamborghini components fit.
Yeah.
Are there any other Lamborghini factory bits?
There's a lot
There
on
are?
this car.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of little details.
Yeah.
The rear view mirror there, that's Lamborghini.
Lamborghini. Yep. Okay.
This cowling here is Lamborghini.
Wow.
And then there's some bits that you can't see that are out of a Lamborghini.
Unreal. And brakes are Willwood.
Brakes are all Willwood.
Yeah.
I love Willwood. I put them on my Mustang. They're fantastic. I have no complaints.
Unbelievable. So, Sterling, let's go back to the front of the car and now ask the questions that I think people really want to know is, how long has this project taken you?
A little over 5.5 years to this point.
Okay, 5.5 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot of patience you have.
You have to, the whole thing about doing a build of this magnitude is you have to commit to it. You know, there's so many cars like this and projects that just sit in people's garages and collect dust, and then they finally sell them. And the point here is that some people run on a treadmill. I get out into the garage every hour.
Okay.
So that's just the difference.
So what I think is also fascinating about you is you have a full-time job and you have a family and you have, you know, life to manage. How do you make time to fit this in? How are you working this in your life?
If there's a point in time in my daily life where I'm really not doing much, I come out and do this.
You build a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Now, what's been the biggest challenge of the whole project so far?
It's the doors.
The doors.
We come back to the doors.
100%. Wow.
100%. They are the hardest part because one of the things is that these doors are they have to be smooth. They have to come down and latch and do all of these things that you know, you take for granted on a door, door slammer, right? And they have to come up at an angle, and they have to come up, and they can't wiggle. You don't want them to wiggle too much, so
Yeah,
you
'cause
have
that
to have
looks
a pretty
bad, yeah.
sturdy I got mine to wiggle about as much as the real Aventador, so I felt I did pretty well there.
The Lamborghini wiggle quotient.
Yeah, they do have a wiggle quotient, so no doubt.
And I mean, what's left? It looks like to me you're pretty close.
I know,
but there's a lot of stuff left.
There's a lot left, yeah. So obviously we just took care of a lot of the big stuff, which is getting the panels and primer, getting them smoothed out because they were pretty rough.
Okay.
Getting all the lines matched, like for instance, the lines on the doors here.
Yeah.
So since I have, I added a little bit of flair. So on the real Aventador, this line actually is straight.
Okay.
On my car, if you go through the door, it's actually curved.
Gotcha.
So it curves up and then over. So that line was hard to get figured out how I was even going to do it.
When you're working with like fine tweaks in the bodywork, is it like working with like your 69 where you can use filler or you can use bond in places, or is it like, wow?
I don't like using a lot of that crap.
Okay.
I do have a little bit more leeway with the composite panels, right? Because I can't knock out a dent, right? If it's a composite, it's in there. What I did find out is with the heat gun and a little bit of patience, I can actually pull some of those defects out.
Wow.
But no, it does have body filler on it. Don't get me wrong. and there's some glass mat involved and other things on there. So it's, if something falls off, I wouldn't be surprised.
So you mentioned off camera, like you had a fuel injector issue. So we're not going to see it run today, but it does run.
It does. It runs and drives.
Driven it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I drive it up and down the street here.
Wow.
I've had it up to about 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And what's the plan? I mean, how does one, because I think one of the reasons people start with a Fiero or an MR2 is it's got a title and it's got a VIN number and the government done all their checks and they're good and then you got free reign. I mean, how are you going to go about registering this? What's the plan?
So I had the same problem with my Mustang. My Mustang was a rusted out Hulk I got from Texas. And it had multiple VIN numbers on it.
Wow.
Right? Because somebody had grafted some other stuff to it. And so because of that, I actually had to get a Colorado State VIN anyway. And so I actually went through the process. So I've been through that process.
Is it a long process?
It's, if you know how to follow rules and read papers, it's actually not that hard.
Okay, interesting.
And people are very helpful when they know what they're talking about.
Right.
But if they don't, they know somebody who does.
Right.
So with the state, I have had a lot of really good interactions, and I make contacts with people at, say, the Boulder County Clerk's office, and then they know me, and then so when I say, hey, I'm ready to do this, that, or the other thing, then it's a much easier process.
That's who you know, it sounds like.
Most of the time, they raise their hand and get their supervisor to come over, and then the supervisor looks at it and he goes, wow, that's really cool. And then he asks a bunch of questions about it and then goes the extra distance to try to help, me get this through the registration process. So I've already paid the taxes on it. So the next thing to do is so it's, the county knows about it.
Right.
The next thing to do is to take it to the state trooper, have a safety inspection. Do your headlights work? Do your brake lights work? Do you have seat belts? Blah, blah, blah. And then they put a state VIN on it. It's titled, and then I can license it.
So you have just built a car from nothing.
Yeah, it's called a specially constructed vehicle.
Interesting. Is it so? It's
limited in the number of miles you can put on it in a year.
Is it titled as a? Do you just make up a brand?
Yeah.
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 No way.
Yeah, you can make up a brand.
Wow. So brand and make. You just make it up.
Yeah, you just make it up.
Unreal. Are you going to end up painting it a solid color? Or are you going to leave it?
Yeah,
in the
it's going to be. So I've had it in black before. The problem with black, even though it looks really cool and all murdered out and everything, you don't see the lines. They just disappear.
Right.
And so you kind of got to squint and so on. So then I painted it white. And then it's just stunning.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm
going
going
to do
back
with white.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool.
White with the red trim. So you can see that's a little orangey. That's going to get changed out so it's a little more red. But yeah, you see the red accents inside of the cockpit.
It's going to be very cool.
And that happened because the funny story is that when they were over here filming the commercial, their director of marketing was here and from Italy, and I had an Audi steering wheel in there to start, right?
Yeah.
Because A lot of the parts of a Lamborghini are actually Audi.
Sure.
They're from VW Group.
Right.
And so he looks in, he sees that, and he goes, yeah, that's not going to work. So next time he was in country, he came and he brought me a gift and took us out to dinner. So,
Wow, that's great.
So that will be the only Lamborghini badge on the car.
It's going to be on the steering wheel.
Yeah, because that was a gift.
So Sterling, now for the big question, what do you have into it up to this point?
I have about $35,000 into the project.
That's it?
That's it.
$35,000.
But there's a catch.
Okay.
The Lamborghini has just as much into this project as I do.
Okay.
So the two headlights, those are $5,000 a piece.
Wow.
The dash is $20,000.
20 grand,
20
for the
grand
dash?
for a dash.
Wow.
And then the steering wheel is $5,000.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. So what other big expenses do you have left on the car?
Paint.
Okay.
So
Are you going to do it yourself, or are you going to send it to a shop?
So I mentioned my friend down in South Denver. He actually has a business doing trailers, and he has a paint booth.
Oh,
and
wow.
he's a very accomplished painter. So he'll be at the car show with me, and I'm going to take all of my panels come off.
Okay.
So I can just take them all down there and hand them to him and say, here, paint them.
They all come off.
They all come
Quarter
off.
panel,
Everything.
sills.
It all comes off. Even the windshield surround comes off.
So you could drive the car as just the chassis.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And what's going to be? I mean, do you think you have any idea how many hours? I mean, 5.5 years. Have you
About
ever done the
2,000.
math? 2,000 hours.
Yeah.
And how much?
So a man year, probably.
How much more do you think you have left to go?
You know, that's always a trick question, right? When is a car really done?
Right.
Yeah. To get it on the street and to get it painted and taking it around to shows, I think we're about a year out.
That's not far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of padding that a bit because I've been wrong before.
Are you going to drive it on the street when it's done?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Wow. 35 grand. Well, Sterling, if it's okay with you, I'd love to see the little machine that kind of helped put this
You bet.
together. Yeah, it'd be really cool to see that.
Okay.
So Sterling, this little box we're looking at is what printed a whole car.
This one actually printed a lot of the base parts.
Okay.
So for all the trims.
Gotcha.
The other printer I had that printed the body, the Creality, that printer was going for 1.25 years, almost non-stop.
Wow.
So it was a prototyping printer I pushed at an industrial rate.
Wow. Any issues?
And it finally died.
Okay.
But again, I pushed that thing really, really hard.
Wow.
And it printed the entire body.
Wow.
And so now I have this printer here. This was also a gift from another company who saw one of their printers on one of our videos. And so decided that they wanted to also contribute to the project.
So how much, if someone wanted to buy a printer like this, what do they typically run?
Anywhere from $200 to $1,000.
That's not
depending
crazy.
on the size and the features and what you want to print and so on and so forth. And these are called FDM printers, or they basically they're filament. You see the little spool in the background. It just feeds a little plastic filament into the head.
Wow.
And then it squirts it out in a very specific pattern.
Yeah, interesting.
And then they have other printers that use resin, and they kind of expose the resin with ultraviolet light in a certain pattern, and then that just pulls out of a goop, and you get these 3D prints as well. Those are better for detail. It's like if you're doing figurines and things of that nature. So this is better for bulk.
Are there larger 3D printers that could print the whole quarter panel?
There are.
Okay.
Yeah, there are industrial sized printers, and there are actually some that are under $10,000
Interesting.
that are 1 meter cubed.
Would that have saved a lot of time?
Oh, hell yeah.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about the process using this printer. So you have a computer, you draw the part in CAD, it sounds like.
Right.
And then you send it to the printer.
Well, I section it up first.
Okay, so you
I have to
section it
section
first.
it up first so that it can go into the printer as the size it is. So
okay.
it fits.
Gotcha.
And then you print those individual little sections and then glue them all together.
So let's take that rear bumper, for example,
Sure.
right? You built it in how many bits, do you remember?
Probably about 50.
50 components,
Yeah.
individual. So how long did it take to print those 50 components?
A bumper like that takes about 2 weeks to print and
Nonstop.
assemble.
Yeah. And what do you think the material would cost to print a bumper like that?
The material costs, I believe that has about 10 spools in it. So about $200.
And the whole car is how many spools in it, you think?
250, including mistakes.
Okay, interesting. So the whole bodywork is about 250 spools.
Yeah.
And if you had to guess, what do you think the price on all those 250 spools was?
So they were around $20 a piece. So you're
Interesting.
looking at $5,000.
Do you have like a spool source that are just like constantly?
I get whatever's cheapest on Amazon.
Wow, really? No way.
Yep.
Unreal. And then I noticed behind you, you've got that huge roll of
Yep.
of the
I've got
carbon material.
Carbon. I've got more carbon here. I've got carbon, and this is carbon Kevlar.
Wow.
So this is kind of a little accent piece.
And you can just buy this.
And you can just buy this.
So once the part comes out of the machine, do you assemble that bumper first and then wrap it in the carbon? Okay.
What I do is, so the rear bumper, it's a new one. I decided I didn't like the old one. It was too heavy. It had too much crap on it. And so I printed a new one. And what I did with that one is I just skinned the inside with the heavier carbon fiber, this material right here. And that gives it the strength to hold together. And then the outside, I just put another skin of carbon fiber on it. And then bodywork over the top of that and then primed it.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is the carbon more expensive than the 3D printed
It
material?
is. Yeah. It's about $30 a yard.
Was it a big learning curve on?
Yes.
Yeah, I bet it was.
My first bumper that I printed, I put it in the vacuum bag, and I didn't check for a thing called bridging.
Okay.
Which means that the plastic has nowhere to go into a void. And so it bridges across that void. And when that happens, you pull a vacuum on it, basically, I think we're at 12.7 PSI here in Denver, that pushes down on the part. And if you have that big void in there, it'll just crush the part. And that's what happened. My entire bumper, I spent 2 weeks printing, just went.
Wow.
So that was a big learning curve.
Has there been a lot of those instances where you print a door or quarter panel and you have to restart? Yeah. I mean, this is a test of, as if building a car wasn't hard enough, of just sheer patience. Would it have been easier to have done it in fiberglass, you think?
Sure.
Okay.
Definitely.
So you mentioned there was a couple other guys doing something similar.
Yeah.
Are they doing the 3D printed route?
They're moving faster than me.
Okay, so they're using fiberglass.
One of them's retired, and one of them actually does it in his shop where his business runs.
Yeah.
So they have a little bit of an advantage there as well. And then my friend Dario, who's down in South Denver, building his Aventador, he bought the fiberglass kit from the same place as my friend in Texas. And he's changed it so much, he was just like, I should have just started from scratch.
Wow.
Yeah, because he wanted that look. He wanted the people to walk up and say, "Oh, that's an Aventador," right? And he does regret having to do that, but now he has like a real front bumper and a real rear bumper, and then he had to graft that into this fiberglass thing he bought.
Yeah.
That just doesn't quite fit.
Doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be a point of pride if I was you to be like, sure, the headlights in the dash are Aventador, but that front fender that everybody thought was also Aventador, I made in a little box in my basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild. So what are you printing here?
So there's a Aventador body kit that you can get from a company called Liberty Walk.
Yeah, right.
And they have some really, really cool, very exotic kits that are like $100,000 or something like that. But there's a few features on those kits I kind of like, and I want to try them on the car.
Okay.
So you spend 12 hours printing one out, you try it on, you go, well, this sucks. Then it goes into the recycling bin and you do something else.
Wow.
So like when I do the side skirts and the front splitter, I'll probably try a few designs before I get one that I like.
So Sterling, what are you most proud of? If you had to pick one part or one story with this car, what are you most proud of that you would tell people?
Well, I hate to say the doors again, so I won't.
Doors are a really big deal if you haven't gotten that. The doors are big.
I think the thing I'm most proud of is the interior.
Yeah.
Is being able to get it as close as possible to the actual Aventador interior, do it some justice, so that it just has that feel when you get into the car.
Right.
Because they lent us one for 2 weeks.
Okay.
and a real one.
Yeah.
$500,000 car. And I wanted to sleep in that thing. It was just amazing. And it wasn't what you really think about with a supercar. It wasn't tight. It was very roomy. It was comfortable. I had a friend come by with a Countach, and I sat in that, and it was miserable.
Right.
You know, so they've really come a long way.
Yeah.
As far as comfort.
So what would you call this? Because people like to put labels on things, and like it's not a kit car because there's no kit that you started from. I mean, how would you describe this build to someone?
Scratch build.
Scratch built.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, Sterling, if folks want more detail on the process, you have a fantastic YouTube channel. How do folks find out more?
I don't know if it's fantastic.
It's pretty good. I've seen it. It's pretty
anyway, it documents the process of going through this build.
Yeah.
And it shows everything. It shows the, you know, victories, and it shows a lot of the failures.
Right.
And I also get a lot of good input from my community. So the comment section is almost always positive.
That's great.
You know, you get a couple of trolls every now and again, but that's fine. And not all the comments are, you know, constructive, but they are, or going the way I want them. But it makes you think, right? And you go, yeah, you know, that guy is kind of right. That was stupid.
Interesting. Yeah, I gotcha.
So it's called Laser Sterling.
Mm-hmm.
It's on YouTube, and we're also on Facebook.
Perfect.
So same handle.
Laser Sterling, and we'll include some links in the description so you can check out his channel, because you want to check out his channel. It's very, very cool. And Sterling, I want to thank you for your service to your country, to our country. I want to thank you for the incredible tour of one of the coolest things I've seen all year. You know, I'm very fortunate where I get to work with car manufacturers and see how they build things, and it's always like, wow, it's impressive, but you have $100 billion to build this factory. You built a car, a Lamborghini, for 35 grand. That's pretty amazing. All right, thank you, sir.
I really appreciate you coming out, and thanks for coming and looking at the car. We love showing it off.